Captain Sarah Chun stared at the scanner readings and blinked hard. The numbers did not change. Her salvage ship, the Remnant Hunter, had been looking for scrap metal in the Kepler 442 system for 3 days. What she found instead made no sense. Tom. "Check these readings again," she called to her engineer. Tom was a big man with grease under his fingernails and 20 years of space work behind him. He knew machines better than most people knew their own families. Tom looked at the screen and whistled low. "Captain, those energy readings are huge. Whatever is out there, it is big, really big." Sarah felt her heart beat faster. Big meant valuable. Valuable meant they could finally pay off the debts on their ship, and maybe even buy some decent food. They had been eating protein paste for 2 months. "How big are we talking?" she asked. "At least 40 ships, maybe more, all giving off power signatures like they are still running." Tom scratched his beard. "But that makes no sense. There are no colonies out here. No trade routes. Nothing." Sarah checked their position. Again, they were in the asteroid belt around Kepler 442, a dead system that most people avoided. The rocks here were too small to mine and too spread out to be worth the fuel costs. Perfect for hiding, terrible for making money. "Could be pirates," said Maria, their pilot. She was young but sharp, with quick reflexes and quicker thinking. "Maybe they are using the asteroids to hide their base." Sarah shook her head. "Pirates do not run that many ships at once, and they do not leave their engines running when they are hiding." She made her decision. "Set course for those readings, but keep our weapons ready and our engines warm. If this goes bad, I want to be able to run fast." The Remnant Hunter moved through the asteroid field like a fish swimming through rocks. Sarah had been doing this job for 8 years, ever since the war started. The Hegemony Alliance controlled most of the good systems now, and humans were left to pick through the scraps. Ships like hers survived by finding what others had lost or thrown away got. As they got closer, the scanner readings became clearer. Tom's face went pale. "Captain, you need to see this." Sarah looked at the detailed scan and felt her mouth go dry. The ships were not hidden behind asteroids. They were floating in perfect formation, as if they had just stopped in the middle of space. Every ship was intact. No blast holes. No missing pieces. No signs of battle. "That is impossible," Maria whispered. Sarah counted the ships on her screen. 47 vessels in total. 3 of them were massive dreadnoughts, each one bigger than any ship she had ever seen. There were carrier ships designed to hold smaller fighters, support vessels for repairs and supplies, and at the center, one enormous flagship that dwarfed everything else. "Tom, what do you know about old human ship designs?" Tom studied the images. "These look like military vessels, but the design is wrong. Too advanced. We do not build ships like this anymore." Sarah zoomed in on the flagship. She could see writing on the hull. The letters were faded but still readable. Terra's Promise. "Check the ship registry database," she ordered. Tom's fingers flew over his console. After a few minutes, he looked up with confusion written all over his face. "Captain, according to the database, the Terra's Promise was the flagship of the Terra Exodus fleet, but that fleet was lost over 300 years ago." Sarah felt cold fingers run down her spine. "That is not possible. Ships do not last 300 years in space without maintenance." "Maybe someone is playing a trick," Maria suggested. But her voice showed she did not believe it herself. Sarah made another decision. "We are going aboard that flagship. Tom, get the suits ready. Maria, keep the ship ready to run if things go wrong." "Captain, maybe we should call this in to the Colonial Authority," Tom said, "and let them take our find." "No way. We check it out. First, if it is really what it looks like, we will be rich enough to buy our own planet." 20 minutes later, Sarah was floating through space in her pressure suit. The Terra's promise grew larger as she approached it. The ship was beautiful in a way that modern vessels were not. Every line was smooth and purposeful. The metal showed no signs of damage from space dust or radiation. It looked like it had been built yesterday. She found an airlock on the ships, sighed, and was surprised when it opened at her touch. The systems were still working. Emergency lights came on as she cycled through the airlock. When she removed her helmet, she found the air was clean and breathable. The corridors inside the ship were wide and well lit. Everything was clean and organized. Too clean. Sarah had been on dozens of abandoned ships, and they were always covered in dust and debris. This ship looked like the crew had just stepped out for lunch. She made her way to the bridge, following signs on the walls. Her footsteps echoed in the empty hallways. The sound made her nervous. She kept expecting to see someone around the next corner, but the ship was completely empty. The bridge was huge, with stations for at least 20 officers. In the center was a captain's chair that looked more like a throne. Above it all, a massive screen showed the stars outside. Sarah approached the main computer console and was amazed when it activated at her touch. Text appeared on the screen. "Welcome aboard the Terra's Promise. Please state your name and authorization code." Sarah stared at the words. The computer was asking for authorization from someone who had been dead for 3 centuries. She tried typing her own name. "I am Captain Sarah Chun of the salvage vessel Remnant Hunter." The screen flickered. New text appeared. "Authorization not recognized. Please wait while I contact the appropriate authorities." "There are no authorities to contact," Sarah said to the empty bridge. "Your crew has been gone for 300 years. The computer was quiet for a long moment. Then new words appeared. "Scanning temporal displacement indicators. Analysis complete. Current date confirmed as July 26, 2459. Temporal displacement of 302 years. 4 months and 11 days detected. Initiating emergency protocols." Sarah felt her heart hammering in her chest. The computer thought it was still in the year 2157. It thought its crew was coming back. A new voice filled the bridge. It was smooth and calm, definitely artificial. Intelligence. "Greetings, Captain Chun. I am a TLAS, the shipboard artificial intelligence of the Terra's Promise. It appears that a significant amount of time has passed since my last active period. May I ask what has become of the Terra Exodus fleet and the human colonies?" Sarah did not know how to answer. How do you tell a computer that its entire world was gone? That the war it was built to fight had been lost centuries ago? That humanity was now barely surviving on the edges of space? "The situation is complicated," she said finally. "I see. Captain Chun, I must inform you that this fleet contains 12,000 human personnel in temporal stasis. They have been waiting for a chronologically appropriate rescue. It appears that time has arrived." Sarah felt the floor seem to shift under her feet. 12,000 people. A whole fleet of ships. Technology that was centuries ahead of anything humans had now. This was not just a salvage find. This was something that could change everything. But as she looked out at the stars through the bridge windows, she wondered if change was what humanity needed, or if some things were better left in the past. Sarah stared at the glowing text on the screen. 12,000 people in stasis. The number seemed impossible. Her own ship carried only 3 crew members, and that was tight quarters. How could one fleet hold so many people? "Atlas," she said carefully, "can you show me where these people are?" The main screen changed to show a map of the ship. Dozens of sections were marked in blue. Each blue section contained stasis pods, hundreds of them. Sarah realized that most of the ship was designed just for keeping people alive and suspended. Animation. The crew has been in temporal stasis for 302 years, 4 months, and 11 days, Atlas said. All life signs remain stable. However, I must warn you that the stasis system requires significant power to maintain. We have perhaps 6 months of reserve power remaining. Sarah felt panic rising in her chest. 6 months. If she could not figure out what to do with these people in 6 months, they would all die. The weight of 12,000 lives suddenly rested on her shoulders. Why are they in stasis? She asked. The fleet encountered a spatial anomaly during our mission to establish colonies in the Tau Ceti system. Our scientists believed it to be a natural fold in spacetime. When we attempted to pass through it, something went wrong. The fleet was displaced through time rather than space. The AI paused, as if thinking. Admiral Vega made the decision to place the crew in stasis until we could determine our temporal location and find a way home. I was tasked with monitoring the situation and awakening the crew when rescue became possible. Admiral Vega? Sarah asked. Admiral Marcus Vega, Fleet Commander. Perhaps you have heard of him in your historical records? Sarah had not, but then again, her education had focused more on ship repair than ancient history. What can you tell me about him? Admiral Vega was considered the finest military strategist of his generation. He led the defense of the Luna colonies during the Martian uprising. He designed the tactics that broke the siege of Europa Station. The Terra Exodus fleet was his greatest command, carrying the most advanced military technology of the 22nd century. Military technology. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. These were not just any ships. They were warships built for fighting. In her time, humans were losing a war against the Hegemony Alliance. The alien coalition had better weapons, better ships, and better numbers. Humanity survived by running and hiding. But what if they did not have to run anymore? ATLAS, what kind of weapons do these ships carry? The fleet is equipped with quantum torpedo systems, adaptive plasma shields, and antimatter propulsion drives. Each dreadnought carries enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The fighter craft use phase shift technology that makes them nearly impossible to target. Sarah had never heard of most of these technologies. Her own ship carried 2 small laser cannons that could barely punch through asteroid rock. The Hegemony. Ships that patrolled human space were feared because they had particle beam weapons and energy shields. But this fleet sounded like it could take on the entire Hegemony Navy. I need to see Admiral Vega, she said. I cannot recommend awakening the Admiral without proper preparation. Temporal displacement can cause psychological difficulties. Crew will need time to adjust to their new temporal location. How much time? Standard protocol suggests a gradual awakening process over several weeks. However, given the critical nature of our power situation, we could begin emergency revival procedures immediately. Sarah thought about the war raging across human space. Every day, more colonies fell to the Hegemony. More humans died or were enslaved. If this fleet could make a difference, every hour of delay cost lives. Begin the emergency revival procedures for Admiral Vega. Are you certain, Captain Chun? You would be taking responsibility for the well-being of a man who has been displaced. 3 centuries from his own time. Sarah thought about her own life. She spent her days searching through wreckage, looking for scraps to sell. She lived on protein paste and recycled water. She watched human colonies surrender to alien masters because they had no choice. Maybe it was time for humans to have a choice again. I am certain. Wake him up. Atlas guided Sarah through the ship to the command stasis bay. The room was filled with pods that looked like glass coffins. Each one held a person floating in blue liquid, connected to tubes and wires. Sarah could see their faces through the transparent lids. They looked peaceful, as if they were just sleeping, The central pod was larger than the others. Through its lid, Sarah could see a man who looked to be in his 50s. His hair was gray at the temples, and his face had the hard lines of someone who had made difficult decisions. This was Admiral Marcus Vega. "Beginning revival sequence," Atlas announced. "Estimated time to consciousness, 47 minutes. Sarah watched as the blue liquid drained from the pod. Machines hummed and beeped as they worked to bring a 300-year-old man back to life. She tried to imagine what it would be, like to go to sleep in one century and wake up in another. Everything you knew would be gone. Everyone you loved would be dead. "Captain Shun," Atlas said, "while we wait, perhaps you could tell me about the current state of human civilization." Sarah did not know where to begin. "It is not good. We are at war with something called the Hegemony Alliance. 4 alien races that work together. They have better technology and more ships than we do. Most human colonies have either been conquered or destroyed. How many humans remain free? Maybe 50 million, spread across a dozen colonies. We used to have over 1 billion people in hundreds of systems." The AI was quiet for a long moment. "I see. And what of Earth?" "Earth is under hegemony control, has been for 10 years. This is indeed grave news. Admiral Vega will not be pleased to learn that humanity has lost its home world." The revival process continued. Sarah watched monitors that showed the Admiral's vital signs growing stronger. His body temperature rose. His heart began to beat faster. Brain activity increased. Finally, the pod lid opened with a soft hiss. Admiral Vega opened his eyes and looked directly at Sarah. His gaze was sharp and intelligent, with no sign of confusion. "Despite being asleep for 3 centuries, report," he said. His voice was hoarse but commanding. "Sir, my name is Captain Sarah Chun. You have been in temporal stasis for over 300 years. The current date is July 26th, 2459. Vega sat up, slowly, his body adjusting to consciousness. "Atlas, confirm this information." "Confirmed, Admiral. We have experienced temporal displacement of 302 years, 4 months, and 11 days. The Admiral showed no emotion at this news. "What is the status of the fleet?" "All ships are intact and operational. All personnel remain in stasis, awaiting your orders." "And what is the current military situation?" Sarah took a deep breath. "Humanity is losing a war against an alien alliance. Most of our colonies have fallen. Earth is occupied. The human military consists of whatever ships manage to escape the initial attacks." Admiral Vega was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold as space itself. "I see. It appears that humanity's need for strong leadership has only grown in our absence." He looked at Sarah with eyes that had seen too many battles. "Captain Shun, you have awakened me at humanity's darkest hour. I believe that is not a coincidence." Sarah felt something change in the air around them. This man was not just a military officer. He was a force of nature, someone who could make the hard choices that others could not. She had wanted to find something valuable in the asteroid field. Instead, she had found something far more dangerous. She had found a weapon that could win a war dot or destroy everything in the process. Admiral Vega stood on the bridge of the Terra's Promise and watched as his fleet came back to life. One by one, the ships around them began to glow with power. Engines that had been silent for 3 centuries hummed back to full strength. Weapon systems that belonged to a forgotten age charged up and came online. It had taken 2 weeks to wake up the entire fleet. 12,000 people, confused and scared, learning that their world was gone. Vega had handled it the way he handled everything, with cold efficiency and iron discipline. There had been some breakdowns, some crew members who could not accept the truth. But most of his people were soldiers, and soldiers followed orders. Sarah watched from her position at a side console. Vega had allowed her to stay aboard as a liaison with the current human forces. She was supposed to help the fleet understand how things worked in 2459, but she was beginning to wonder if Vega cared about understanding anything except how to fight. Status report. Vega commanded. Commander Rebecca Torres, his second in command, stepped forward. She was a tall woman with steel gray hair and scars on her hands from decades of military service. All ships report ready for combat operations. Admiral, weapon systems are charged. Shields are at full power. The crew has completed their orientation briefings. And what do they think of our new situation? They are angry, sir. Learning that humanity lost Earth while they were sleeping has not been easy to accept. Vega nodded. Good. Anger is useful. It gives us motivation. He turned to Sarah. Captain Shun, show us the current disposition of hegemony forces in this sector. Sarah activated the holographic display in the center of the bridge. A three-dimensional map appeared, showing star systems in different colors. Red systems were under hegemony control. Yellow systems were contested. The few green systems represented free human colonies. There was a lot of red on the map. The nearest hegemony base is in the Ross 128 system, Sarah explained. They have a small fleet there, maybe 20 ships. They use it to patrol this area and stop human ships from moving between colonies. Vega studied the display. 20 ships. What classes? Mostly cruisers and destroyers. One carrier. Standard hegemony design. Atlas, tactical analysis. The AI's voice filled the bridge. Based on the specifications Captain Chon has provided, our 3 dreadnoughts alone could destroy the entire hegemony force at Ross 128 with minimal difficulty. Their weapon systems are centuries behind our own technology. Commander Torres smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Admiral, request permission to take the 1st and 3rd battle groups to Ross 128. We can clear out that base and send a message to the hegemony. Denied, Vega said. We will not announce our presence with a small raid. When we strike, it will be decisive. He pointed to a cluster of red systems. The hegemony has a major base at Proxima Centauri. Intelligence estimates suggest they have over 200 ships stationed there. Sarah felt her heart sink. Admiral, that is one of their most heavily defended positions. The Colonial Authority tried to attack it 3 years ago with 50 ships. None of them came back. The Colonial Authority did not have quantum torpedoes and adaptive shielding, Vega replied. Atlas, plot a course for Proxima Centauri. We will teach the hegemony what happens when they occupy human worlds. Over the next few days, Sarah watched the fleet prepare for battle. The ships moved through space in perfect formation, their coordination flawless. These crews had trained together for years before their temporal displacement. They worked like parts of a single machine, but she also watched the crew members during their off-duty hours. Many of them spent time in the ship's memory banks, looking at records of their families and friends from 3 centuries ago. They read about the fall of Earth, the loss of the colonies, the millions of humans who had died while they slept. The pain in their eyes was terrible to see. She found Admiral Vega in his quarters, studying tactical reports. The room was simple and functional, with no personal items, except for a single photograph on his desk. It showed a woman and 2 children, all smiling. Your family? Sarah asked. My wife and daughters. They were on Earth when we left for the Tau Ceti mission. His voice showed no emotion, but Sarah could see the tension in his shoulders. They died 287 years ago. I am sorry. Do not be sorry. Be useful. He looked up from his reports. Tell me about hegemony tactics. How do they fight? They rely on superior numbers and firepower. Their ships are tough, but not very fast. They usually try to surround human forces and destroy them with concentrated fire. And how do current human forces respond? We run. Sometimes we try hit-and-run attacks, but mostly we just try to avoid direct confrontation. Viga's expression darkened. Cowards. No wonder humanity is losing. Sarah felt anger rise in her chest. We are not cowards. We are trying to survive. Every ship we lose is people who will never come home. Every battle we fight costs us resources we cannot replace. Every battle you refuse to fight costs you systems you will never get back, Vega countered. The hegemony does not respect weakness. They see humans running, and they think we are prey animals. It is time to remind them that humans are predators. The fleet reached the edge of the Proxima Centauri system 3 days later. Sarah stood on the bridge as the tactical display showed the hegemony fleet. It was massive, over 250 ships arranged in defensive formations around the star system. The main base was built on an asteroid near Proxima Centauri b, a planet that had once been a human research colony. Admiral, Commander Torres reported, we are detecting human life signs on the planet's surface. Approximately 50,000 people. They appeared to be in labor camps. Sarah felt sick. Labor camps meant slaves. The hegemony had a habit of keeping humans alive to work in their mines and factories. The conditions were brutal, and few survived more than a few years. Can we extract them? She asked. Not without alerting the entire hegemony fleet, Torres replied. Vega was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was ice cold. Signal the fleet. All ships, battle stations. We are going in. Sir, Sarah said, if we attack with the civilians on the planet, the hegemony might kill them. The hegemony kills them slowly every day, Vega replied. At least this way, their deaths will serve a purpose. The battle began with quantum torpedoes fired from beyond the hegemony's detection range. The new weapons moved faster than light and struck their targets before the aliens even knew they were under attack. 3 hegemony cruisers simply vanished, torn apart by forces they could not understand. The hegemony fleet tried to respond, but they were fighting technology from their future. Human ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts, their phase shift, drives making them impossible to target. Adaptive shields turned the aliens' energy weapons back on themselves. In 30 minutes, it was over. The entire hegemony fleet was destroyed. Not a single human ship was even damaged, but as the fleet moved toward the planet to rescue the prisoners, long-range sensors detected something that made Sarah's blood run cold. A massive hegemony battle fleet was moving toward Proxima Centauri from 3 different directions. Over 800 ships in total. They knew we were coming, she whispered. Vega smiled, and it was a terrible thing to see. Of course they did. This was a trap. They wanted to see what we could do. He turned to his tactical officer. Prepare the planet crackers. Sir? Torres asked. If the hegemony wants to use human civilians as shields, then we will remove you. Shields. Fire planet crackers at Proxima Centauri b. Sarah stared at him in horror. Admiral, there are 50,000 people on that planet, and there are 50 million people in the remaining human colonies. I will not risk them for 50,000 who are already dead. They are not dead. We can save them. Vega turned to face her, and she saw something in his eyes that terrified her. It was the look of a man who had made peace with being a monster. Captain Shun, you woke me up to save humanity. This is what saving humanity looks like. Either we win this war completely, or we lose everything. There is no middle ground. The planet. Crackers fired. Sarah watched the tactical display as weapons designed to break apart asteroids struck the surface of Proxima Centauri b. the planet shook apart like a broken egg, taking 50,000 human lives with it. But it also took the hegemony's forward base and their fleet coordination center. The approaching alien fleets suddenly found themselves without orders or support. Vega's forces fell on them like wolves on scattered sheepdog. By the end of the day, over 1,000 hegemony ships had been destroyed. It was the greatest military victory in human history. It was also the day Sarah realized that winning the war might cost humanity its soul. The war changed after Proxima Centauri. News of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than Admiral Vega's ships could travel. A human fleet had appeared from nowhere and destroyed over 1,000 hegemony vessels without losing a single ship. The balance of power had shifted overnight. Sarah stood in the communications center of the Terra's Promise, listening to reports from across human space. Colony after colony was rising up against their hegemony occupiers. Ships that had been hiding in asteroid fields for years were coming out to join the fight. For the first time in a decade, humans were attacking instead of running. But the reports were not all good news. "Admiral," Commander Torres said as she entered the communications center, "we are receiving distress calls from the Kepler 186 system. The hegemony has begun executing civilian populations in response to our victories." Sarah felt sick. On the main screen, she could see footage that had been smuggled out of hegemony-controlled space. Alien soldiers were lining up human civilians and shooting them. Entire cities were being destroyed as punishment for the rebellion. "How many dead?" Vega asked. His voice showed no emotion. "Early reports suggest over 2 million civilians killed in the last week alone," Torres replied. Vega nodded as if she had told him the weather forecast. "Acceptable losses. The hegemony is trying to make us hesitate. They want us to stop fighting to save civilian lives. It is a classic tactic." 2 million people are not acceptable losses," Sarah said. "These are families, children. These are the prices of war," Vega replied coldly. "Every day we delay, more humans die in slave camps. Every battle we do not fight is another system that remains under alien control. Short-term casualties prevent long-term extinction." Sarah wanted to argue, but she could not find the words. Vega was not wrong about the strategic situation. The hegemony had to be stopped. But the cost of stopping them was becoming higher every day. Over the next month, Vega's fleet struck at hegemony positions across the galaxy. They attacked supply lines, destroyed orbital bases, and shattered alien fleets. The Admiral's tactics were brilliant and ruthless. He used the fleet's advanced technology like a surgeon's knife, cutting out hegemony strongholds with precision. But precision and mercy were not the same thing. At Wolf 359, Vega ordered the destruction of a hegemony mining operation that used human slave labor. When his officers suggested trying to rescue the slaves first, he refused. The mining station was destroyed with 30,000 humans still inside. At Gliese 667C, the fleet encountered a hegemony hospital ship carrying wounded aliens from recent battles. Vega classified it as a legitimate military target and destroyed it without warning. At Barnard Star, hegemony forces tried to surrender when they realized they could not win. Vega ordered his ships to fire anyway. Taking prisoners would slow down the fleet and waste resources. Sarah watched each decision with growing horror. The man she had awakened was saving humanity by destroying everything that made humanity worth saving. But the other officers on the fleet saw things differently. To them, Vega was a hero. He was the strong leader that humanity had needed for decades. Under his command, they were winning battles that had seemed impossible. Systems that had been lost for years were being liberated. The crew of the Terra's Promise began to change. Sarah noticed it first in small ways. They stopped talking about the civilian casualties. They started using words like acceptable losses and strategic necessity. When she tried to bring up the moral cost of their victories, they looked at her like she was naive. Commander Torres was the worst. She had been a reasonable officer when she first woke up from stasis. But now she talked about aliens like they were insects that needed to be exterminated. She volunteered for the most brutal missions and seemed to enjoy the destruction. The hegemony started this war, Torres told Sarah one day. They chose to make it a war of extinction. We are just giving them what they wanted. But we are becoming like them, Sarah replied. No, we are becoming what we need to be to survive. The breaking point came at Tau City, the system that Vega's original fleet had been trying to reach 3 centuries ago, was now a major hegemony stronghold. Intelligence reports suggested that the aliens were building some kind of super weapon. There, something that could destroy entire star systems. Vega decided to attack before the weapon could be completed. But Tau Ceti was different from their previous targets. The system had 4 planets, and 3 of them had large human populations. The hegemony had moved millions of slaves there to work on their weapon project. We need to extract the civilians before we attack, Sarah argued at the tactical briefing. Impossible, Vega replied. The hegemony has too many ships in the system. Any attempt to rescue civilians would alert them to our presence and allow the superweapon to be completed. Then we wait. We find another way. There is no other way. Atlas, tactical assessment. The AI's voice filled the room. Admiral, if the hegemony completes their project, they will have the capability to destroy Earth's sun. Even though Earth is currently occupied, it remains the symbolic heart of human civilization. Its destruction would likely end any remaining human resistance. Vega looked around the table at his officers. The choice is simple. We destroy Tau Ceti now, or we lose the war. All in favor? Every officer except Sarah raised their hand. The attack on Tau Ceti was the most brutal battle of the war. Vega's fleet appeared without warning and began destroying everything in the system. Hegemony ships, orbital platforms, weapons factories. All of it was torn apart by quantum torpedoes and antimatter bombs. But the superweapon was built into the surface of Tau Ceti's largest planet. The only way to destroy it completely was to crack the planet open. Sarah stood on the bridge and watched as Vega gave the order. Planet crackers fired at point-blank range, breaking apart a world that held over 5 million human slaves. The tactical display showed the planet coming apart like a broken toy. Chunks of rock and metal scattered into space, carrying with them the fragments of cities and the dust of dreams. Target destroyed, Torres reported. The superweapon is gone. Excellent, Vega said. Signal the fleet. Set course for our next objective. Sarah could not take it anymore. How can you be so calm? You just killed 5 million people. I saved 50 million, Vega replied. If that weapon had been completed, every human in the galaxy would be dead. You do not know that. I know. War. I know that the enemy will use every weapon they have, and we must prevent them from having those weapons. This is how victory is achieved. Sarah looked around the bridge at the other officers. They were nodding in agreement. To them, Vega's logic was perfect. The needs of the many outweighed the needs of the few. But Sarah remembered something her grandfather had told her before he died. He had been a soldier in the early days of the Hegemony War, back when humans still tried to fight with honor. The moment you become willing to do anything to win, he had said, you have already lost everything worth fighting for. As she looked at Admiral Vega, Sarah realized that her grandfather had been right. They were winning the war, but they were losing their humanity in the process. And the worst part was that most of them did not even care. The hegemony, meanwhile, was learning to fear humanity in a way they never had before. The aliens had always seen humans as weak and disorganized. But now they were facing an enemy that fought with a cold brutality that matched their own. Other alien species began to take notice. The war was no longer just between humans and the Hegemony Alliance. It was becoming something larger and more dangerous. The galaxy was choosing sides, and the choices were getting harder to make. Sarah knew that something had to change. The fleet was becoming a weapon of mass destruction, with no one to control it, except a man who had lost touch with everything except winning. But changing course meant challenging Admiral Vega, and Admiral Vega had the loyalty of 12,000 soldiers who believed he was humanity's savior. The war was far from over, but Sarah was beginning to wonder if humanity would survive its own victory. The end began with a message from Earth. Sarah was in her quarters when Atlas announced that they had received a transmission from the Sol system. Earth had been under hegemony control for 10 years, its population enslaved or killed. No human had expected to hear from their home world again. The message was short and desperate. A group of human resistance fighters had managed to seize control of an orbital communication station. They had maybe an hour before hegemony forces would retake it. Their words were simple. Admiral Vega's fleet, if you exist, Earth needs you. The hegemony is planning something terrible. Please come home. Sarah found Admiral Vega on the bridge, staring at the tactical display. The fleet was positioned near the edge of hegemony space, having won another crushing victory against alien forces. Over the past 6 months, they had destroyed hundreds of enemy ships and liberated dozens of systems. The war was going well, too well. We have to go to Earth, Sarah said. No, Vega replied without looking at her. Earth is a trap. The hegemony wants us to come to Sol System so they can surround us with their entire fleet. But the message could be fake. Probably is fake. Vega finally turned to face her. Captain Shun, I know you still have sentimental feelings about Earth, but Earth is just another planet. We cannot risk the entire war for sentiment. Sarah felt anger burning in her chest. Earth is not just another planet. It is our home. It is where humanity began. Humanity began on Earth, Vega agreed. But humanity's future is out here, among the stars. We will build new worlds, better worlds. Earth is the past. Over the next few days, more messages came from Earth. Each one was more desperate than the last. The resistance fighters described huge construction projects in Earth orbit, massive weapons platforms being built by slave labor, something the hegemony called the final solution. Other members of the fleet began to question Vega's decision. Commander Torres brought a petition signed by over 200 officers, requesting that they go to Earth. Even Atlas suggested that the threat might be real, but Vega refused to budge. Earth is lost, he declared at a senior staff meeting. We will not throw away our victories to chase ghosts. That night, Sarah made her decision. She could not stop Vega directly. He had the loyalty of too many crew members. But she could try to reach the others, the ones who still remembered what they were fighting for. She started with the younger officers, the ones who had not been hardened by months of brutal warfare. She reminded them of their families, their homes, their reasons for joining the military in the first place. She showed them recordings of Earth from before the war, images of blue skies and green forests and cities full of life. Some of them listened. Lieutenant Maria Santos, a fighter, pilot from Vega's original crew, came to Sarah's quarters late one night. Captain Shun, I have been thinking about what you said, about why we are fighting this war. And I joined the military to protect people. But lately, it feels like we are just killing them in different ways. Sarah felt hope for the first time. In months, what do you want to do about it? I want to go home. I want to save Earth, even if it costs us the war. More officers came to Sarah over the next few days. Engineers who were tired of building planet crackers. Medical officers who had stopped counting civilian casualties. communications specialists, who had to listen to the screams from dying worlds. They were still a minority. Most of the fleet remained loyal to Vega, but they were enough to make a difference. The mutiny happened during the Battle of Rigel. Vega had taken the fleet to attack another hegemony stronghold when Sarah's people acted. Half the ships suddenly broke formation and jumped to hyperspace. Their destination, Earth. Vega was furious. "Bring them back," he ordered the remaining ships. "Sir," Commander Torres replied, "they have disabled their communication systems. We cannot contact them. Then we follow them. I will not let traitors destroy everything we have built." The two halves of the human fleet raced toward Sol System on parallel courses. Sarah commanded the rebel ships from the bridge of the cruiser New Hope. She knew that Vega would try to stop them before they reached Earth, but she also knew that every hour of delay might mean the difference between saving Earth and losing it forever. They emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol System and found a nightmare waiting for them. The hegemony had turned Earth's orbit into a weapon. Massive platforms surrounded the planet, each one capable of cracking a world in half. Thousands of alien ships patrolled the system, and at the center of it all, Earth itself hung like a blue and white jewel in a cage of metal and death. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Santos, "how many ships do they have?" "Too many," Sarah replied. The tactical display showed over 5,000 hegemony vessels. Even Vega's entire fleet could not defeat numbers like that, but they had to try. The battle for Earth was unlike anything in human history. Sarah's ships attacked the orbital platforms, while alien fleets swarmed around them like angry wasps. Human fighters dodged between massive space stations, trying to find weak points in the hegemony defenses. Then Vega arrived with the rest of the fleet. For a moment, Sarah thought he would attack her ships and leave Earth to its fate. But when he saw the scale of the hegemony operation, something changed in his eyes. "All ships," Vega's voice came over the communication system, "concentrate fire on the orbital platforms. We save Earth first. We settle our differences later." The combined human fleet struck like a hammer. Quantum torpedoes shattered alien defenses. Antimatter bombs turned space stations into expanding clouds of gas. For a few precious hours, it looked like they might actually win, but the hegemony had prepared for this moment. As the human fleet closed in on Earth, the aliens activated their ultimate weapon. The orbital platforms began to glow with terrible energy. They were not just weapons. They were a single massive device designed to destroy Earth's sun. If the humans got too close, the hegemony would collapse Sol into a black hole and take the entire system with them. "Admiral," Atlas reported, "the enemy weapon is charging. If it fires, it will destroy everything within 3 light hours of Sol." Vega stared at the tactical display, his face gray with realization. "We cannot stop them. If we destroy the platforms, the weapon will activate automatically. If we retreat, they will fire it anyway." Sarah felt despair crushing down on her. They had come so far, sacrificed so much, only to fail at the last moment. Then she remembered something her grandfather had told her. The moment you become willing to do anything to win, you have already lost everything worth fighting for. Maybe it was time to stop trying to win. Maybe it was time to try something else. "Open a channel to the hegemony fleet," she ordered. "Sarah, what are you doing?" Vega demanded. "Something you never learned how to do. I am going to talk to them." The main screen flickered and showed the bridge of a hegemony command ship. The alien commander was a tall creature with 4 arms and scales that shifted color with emotion. Sarah had never seen one of their species before, but she could read the hatred in its multiple eyes. "Humans," the alien hissed. "You have come to die with your birth world. How poetic." I have come to make you an offer, Sarah replied. Let the people of Earth go. In exchange, we will surrender our fleet. The alien laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You think we fear your ships? We have prepared for decades for this moment. No, you have prepared to fight Admiral Vega. You have not prepared to fight me. Sarah looked directly into the alien's eyes. You want to destroy us because you think we are monsters. Because you have seen what we can do when we fight without mercy. But what if we chose to fight differently? What are you talking about? I am talking about showing you who humans really are. Not the weapons we build or the planets we crack, but the choices we make when everything is on the line. Sarah turned to her crew. All ships power down weapons. Drop shields. Show them that we choose to trust instead of destroy. Around her, the human fleet went dark. Thousands of ships, the most powerful weapons in the galaxy, suddenly became helpless. It was either the bravest act in human history or the most foolish. The hegemony commanders stared at the display, showing the defenseless human ships. You are either very brave or very stupid. Maybe both, Sarah admitted. But I would rather die stupid and brave than live smart and alone. For a long moment, nobody moved. The orbital platform still glowed with deadly energy. Alien ships surrounded. The humans like sharks around wounded prey. Earth hung silent in space, waiting to see if its children would live or die. Then something unexpected happened. Other ships began to appear at the edge of the system. Not human ships or hegemony vessels, but ships from dozens of different species. Aliens who had been watching the war from the sidelines, waiting to see who would win. This is Admiral Keth of the Centauri Republic. A new voice said over the communication system. We have come to witness what humans call mercy. The Andromedan. Commonwealth stands ready to mediate, said another voice. The Tau Collective offers sanctuary to all non-combatants, said a third. The galaxy was watching. And for the first time in the war, they were seeing humans choose peace over victory. The hegemony commander looked around at the growing fleet of neutral ships. Sarah could see the calculation in its eyes. The aliens had built their alliance on the idea that humans were monsters who could not be trusted.